Hi, good morning, good afternoon. We're just waiting for a few more people to join, so we will start momentarily. And while we wait, maybe to make it a little bit fun, we'd love to hear a little bit more about where you're calling from or where you're listening to us today. So feel free to add some information on the chat about where you're at today. Joel, where are you calling from today?
I'm calling from Salt Lake City.
Okay. How's the weather there today?
If you like the cold, it is fantastic. If you don't like the cold, it's not so great.
I don't. I'm in Northern California and I'm complaining about the weather. So, Carla, where are you calling from today?
Good morning and good afternoon. I'm calling from Phoenix, Arizona, sunny, 68 degrees, so I can't complain.
Nice. Okay. Great. Sounds like we have a few people from the Bay Area. We have some people from Florida, one in New York. Okay, great. So again, we will start in literally 60 seconds. So just again, waiting for final people to join in. Okay, cool. Let's get started. So welcome to this webinar, which is part of free series of webinars discussing investing long-term in rental properties. Over the next 35 minutes or so, we'll try to bring some clarity to what's happening in the market. We'll leave some time for questions towards the end. So if you have any questions, prepare them and put them on the comments. The next two webinars will focus a little bit more about operationalizing your investment property, and we'll publish them next week. Last two housekeeping items. So again, as I mentioned, if you have any questions, put them in the comment section, and we'll choose a few towards the end for Joel and Carla to answer. A message from our sponsor. I was told to mention that this is not a professional investment advice. This is just our collective experience. So check the mark on that one. With that, I'd like to introduce my two fabulous panelists, Joel and Carla. Carla, would you like to take a minute and introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Good morning and good afternoon for everybody. My name is Carla Sanders, and I have been working in the mortgage industry for the past 20 years. I'm currently working for loanDepot. I rank in top 5% production nationwide, licensed in 10 states. I specialize in investment side of the mortgage. My background is economics, minor in accounting and business administration.
Perfect. Joel, would you like to take a minute and introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a program manager at Belong, and I'm a real estate investor. I've managed over 500 rental units, everything from ADUs to luxury rentals. I own a few rentals myself, and I help coach first-time homeowners getting involved in rental properties for the first time. And I was a real estate agent back in the day.
Perfect. Great. So, Carla, maybe we'll start off with you. And before we dive in, just to kind of set the context, you've been doing this for the last 20 years. What's happening in the market in the last 12 months? And kind of how would you compare that to prior years?
Very fun times has been simple economics, demand and supply chain, as you can see in the chart. In January 2021, inflation was around 1% compared to 2022, 9.1%. inflation has increased by 8.1% in the last year alone. Demand to buy first-time home has significantly gone down because inflation is driving interest rates. Volatility in financial market has increased demand for rental properties in most metro areas like Texas, Washington, Florida, and Ohio. Over the last 3 years, 55% of my production has been investment property purchases.
Wow. Okay. Well, people can't afford mortgages in this market. They still need to live somewhere, right?
Yes, according to Redfin, in the last 3 years nationwide, rent has gone up 20% and mortgages has gone up 50% just in 1 year. It's incredible.
Yeah. Okay. And so, you talked a little bit about kind of mortgages going up. Let's maybe take a specific example with tangible, just to make the numbers a little more tangible.
Sure thing. For example, a mortgage for $400,000 house in 2021 was about $1,796 payments. The same property in 2022 is valued at $460K, assuming 15% appreciation. At 7% interest rate, total payment is $3,092, an increase of $1,296, almost doubled. At the end of the day, it's still best to invest your money in buying investment property in this market.
Wow, so it's almost double. Okay. You talked a little bit about kind of supply and demand. I mean, is what you say, is that agnostic across all states, or there are specific trends in specific states that you're seeing?
It's all across, but three factors driving positive migration: states like Washington, Idaho, Arizona, and Texas. These factors are new job opportunities, higher wages, warmer weather, low cost of living, convenience of working remotely. People who are working remotely have been migrating from higher cost states to low cost states. That said, they are able to rent their primary homes and migrate to lower cost state and to save money practically.
Got it. Okay. So you talked a little bit about Washington, Idaho, Arizona, Texas. What about Florida? I keep hearing about Florida.
Fun, Florida. The baby boomers are downsizing and moving to warmer weather states where cost of living is lower. For example, we see baby boomers moving from New York City to Florida. Rent in Florida is moving up every year due to the demand.
Got it. Okay. We'll talk more about Florida, throughout the webinar. But maybe before we dive into the premise of this webinar, with what areas offer a great ROI, let's talk a little bit about how to think of return on investment. Joel, maybe you want to take the lead on that?
Yeah, so when you're looking into buying a rental property, this is how I analyze deals today and what I teach other people to do. There's 4 things you look at: cash flow, principal pay down, taxes, and appreciation. And when you're getting into the rental market, you need to keep in mind that today's market isn't permanent, and maybe 10 years from now, some of these things are going to change, and you need to have that long-term perspective. So cash flow, for those that aren't familiar, what I'm referring to is, for example, if my rental property brought in $2,000 a month in rent and my expenses were $1,500, I would have a $500 cash flow per month, or $6,000 per year, just revenue minus expenses. With the mortgage rates today, finding positive cash flow is actually quite difficult. And as the market continues to change through refinance or finding other deals or better deals, you'll be able to improve your cash flow over time. Principal pay down. If you have to use a third party to help finance a rental property, every time you make a monthly payment, part of that payment goes towards paying down the principal or the loan balance. This is important because over time you're building significant equity in the rental property. Taxes is a big one. A lot of people don't like paying taxes. I know I don't. and you can leverage things like cost segregation or the tax code in general to help lower your tax burden. And then last of all, appreciation. We've seen some crazy increase in home values over the past 2 years, and right now home values are starting to go down. But on average, over a 10-year period, you're going to see home value appreciation go up. So if it's, for example, 3% year over year on average, and you own a $300,000 property, that's significant gains that you're experiencing over time. So overall, just to summarize, when I'm looking at deals and calculating my return on investment, these are the 4 things I look at, and that helps me make a wiser decision with purchasing a property.
Perfect. Thank you, Joel. I see some questions coming up. Keep those questions going in the comments, and again, we'll take them one by one towards the end. Carla, let's take it down to maybe specific states and counties. You have 3 data sheets for us on Washington, Florida, and then San Diego, California. Can you walk us a little bit through, what we're seeing in the next 3 slides?
Sure thing. Let's first go through the sheet structure, excuse me, from top to left to bottom right. We see the median prices of a single family house with 3 bedroom, 2 bath, the historical and forward looking appreciation, 5-year gain for the rental, labor demographics, percentage of the renters from total population, and then the rental property supply and demand. As you can see, the median in Washington, it's around, we'll round it up to 1 million, let's say. It's 987,000. And appreciation, we've seen it's significant in the 5-year, 20% appreciation, 0.1. And then the gain about, rough estimation, 200,000 in the 5 years. And as you can see, the demographic majority is 27 to 35, and also 36 to 40 moving into the state. And that's pretty much attracted by the tech companies. And as you can see, we have quite a lot of renters, over 240,000, and plus 61,000 that they can't afford to rent, to buy at this time. And further, you see the need of housing still. We have a shortage in Washington state.
Got it. So if I'm kind of summarizing what I see in this sheet, I see young population migrating into the state. I see about somewhere between a quarter to a third of the population are essentially renters, and only a small percentage of them can afford to buy houses and pay the mortgage given the median home price. And then lastly, we see that there's more need for rental properties than exists today in Washington, right?
Correct.
Got
Correct.
it. Okay, perfect. And then we talked a little bit about Florida, so let's talk some more about Florida.
Sure thing. Florida, the median is about 371,000, and the forecast is 24.5%, which is higher than Washington. And at the same time, as you can see, the gains in 5 years, it's about 90,000. And the population, again, we have younger population from 27 to 35 migrating, but majority of the migration we're seeing is the baby boomers, where you can see 55 to 64, they're pretty much moving to the state. And as you can see, we have quite a lot of renters needed places to live in Florida as well. Mm-hmm. And we have a surplus in Florida. It's a little different than Washington being.
Yeah.
And
sorry, go ahead.
No, we're good.
Okay, and then there's about the last one. Sorry, I was cutting you off because I was very excited about the last one, which is San Diego. Yes. And in San Diego, we see there's a huge population, over 3 million population, and then close to half of them are essentially renters, right?
Correct. And a little over, 0.5%. of the pie chart is renters. And as you can see, 291 people cannot even afford to buy in California. And we have about 1.4 million needing rent homes in California due to the being more expensive to purchase in California. And then the majority of the migration, it's happening between 27 and 35. Again, due to the technology, tech companies hiring. And as you can see, the gains are significant in California, 313 in 5 years. And we do have a significant shortage in housing market in California.
Yeah, so about somewhere between a quarter to a third of the demand is supply, but that leaves, more than 60% of the demand essentially unattended, and a lot of young population that's moving to San Diego, right?
Correct. Weather is nice. It's fun town. And at the same time, you can see the appreciation is 35% also.
Got it. Okay. Perfect. Yeah, I mean, I personally love San Diego, and I could definitely use warmer weather. So cool. I mean, let's maybe talk a little bit more about ROI. I mean, given the market conditions, should the audience think about ROI differently than it used to think in prior years? Carla, you want to take it?
In the past, we've seen positive ROIs from the day one, but now we see like the first year, the second year, we're seeing negative ROIs but positive long term. As you can see from the chart, in the next 10 years, they're going to see more positive return, which is almost like 37%. And so long-term wise is good, but the first 2 years, you're going to see like less, but overall it's a best investment.
Got it. Okay. So Joel, given that we want to probably, minimize the risk and get to positive cash flow quickly, what are some of the pitfalls to avoid?
Yeah, knowing what pitfalls to look for when buying a rental property, it's quite crucial. And what I recommend is you need to look at rental properties like a business where you need to have opportunities to increase your cash flow, make more money, cut your costs, and mitigate risk. So pitfalls that you need to avoid. You need to avoid not having value add opportunities. If there's no value that you can add to your rental, then you're going to have less opportunity to make more money down the road, 5-10 years. You also need to make sure you have a good management system in place. If you don't have a good rental management system to take care of your home and your residents, it's not going to protect you. And then third, in this market, you really want to avoid vacancy. If you're not taking care of your rental portfolio correctly, you're going to have a lot of unnecessary costs. So this is what I recommend looking for. You need a one-stop shop that can provide you with the following things. Guarantees are huge. If you outsource to a third-party management company for your rental property, a lot of them have guarantees like a rent guarantee, maintenance guarantee, eviction guarantee. That protects you on the back end. You also need to have a strong vendor network. The more you do business with someone, the chances are you're going to get better deals. Homes fall apart. They're going to need things to be repaired. So when you do have to invest money back into the home, you want to make sure you're getting the best deal possible. And then you also want to have predictable expenses. You want to ensure that you place quality residents. And most importantly, with everything that's happening in the market, you need to be willing to adapt and shift to what's going on. Because if you don't adapt, you're going to have a really hard time in the next year or two.
Got it. Okay, very helpful. So essentially try to make your cash flow predictable, reduce eviction, maintenance, and your property essentially being available without renters. And then on the other side, try to manage your cost And I'm sure we'll talk more about cost in the next couple of minutes. But
Yes.
Joel, Carla mentioned Florida, California, Washington as good investment opportunities. I mean, any trends that you're seeing in those markets?
Yeah, there's a slide with some information I want to share. And in 3 states, Washington, Florida, and California, we've seen some significant rent increases. Now a disclaimer here, a 3-bedroom, 1-bath in California, a 5% rent increase is actually quite significant because a home like that could rent for like $5,000, while in Florida, a similar home would rent for $1,500, you could say, just as an example. Because supply is so tight right now and demand is so high, the past year, medium state level rents, Washington 18%, Florida 25%, California 5%. This is huge. And this is very beneficial to know as an investor, because if I'm able to increase my rent due to market demand by, I would say, 5% on average, that means my cash flow every year is going to increase while my expenses remain the same. I don't foresee Washington and Florida maintaining the kind of pace and rent increases that they're currently having, but it's a good indicator that this market for the next few years and going forward, it's going to remain strong. So even though we might not see 18% year over year, chances are we're going to see a positive rent increase, which is really good if you're the owner of the investment property.
Okay, perfect. I see a question from, I believe it's Faisal. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, about rental demand in Texas. And so, Carla, maybe you would like to add anything to that and double click on Texas a little bit?
Sure thing. Let's dive deeper into like metro areas. Top 6 metro areas with the fastest rising rents year after year. Texas being number 1, 48% increase. And Seattle, number 2, Washington, 32%. Cincinnati, Ohio, 32%. Miami, Florida, 29%. Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 29%. West Palm Beach, Florida, 29%. We've seen significant in these areas.
Got it. Okay. Joel, what about the cost of managing these properties? I mean, how is it different, managing a property in one state to another state? What should one think about when buying in different states?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because the answer to this will vary by state. For example, if I buy a rental property in Florida, pools are very popular, versus if I go buy a home in Washington or California, they're not as common. So by knowing the market, I know if I do buy a rental property in Florida, I'm going to have to calculate my costs accordingly to accommodate those kind of fees. So there's 2 kind of fees that you run into in terms of managing a property. You have the recurring kind that come up usually monthly or quarterly, and then you have one-time fees. On the slide here, I put a few examples, like landscaping. For example, in California, it's normal for the homeowners to pay that every month, not the residents. I live in Salt Lake City. Residents take care of landscaping. Very different environment culturally in terms of that. Pest control, Florida, it's more humid. Chances are you're going to have to pay for more periodic pest control. Gutter cleaning, some areas have more trees than others. It helps prevent flooding. This could be done once or twice a year. Most homes have an HVAC system. You're going to have to replace air filters. Most homes have hot water heaters. Then you have things that most people are familiar with, like insurance. If you have a third-party management company, you have monthly management fees. There's a cost to place residents. If you own a luxury home, chances are you're going to have to pay for things like window cleaning, things you wouldn't do for a lower mid-tier rental property. These are 10 very common things I would look at. However, every state, as you were saying, is different. So I would highly recommend talking to someone who knows the market to know what kind of expenses you can predict.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the comments, and I see a comment from Sarah Brooks about HOA going up in southern Florida by 30-40%. So I guess that's another cost factor that probably exists in Florida and some states, but not in all of them. I don't know, in Salt Lake City, for example, is HOA common?
Yeah, HOAs are pretty common across the board, I think in every state. And the management fees will vary depending on the kind of amenities that are available, because an HOA is basically a community that pulls funds together to help cover costs. In my personal primary residence, we have an HOA, we have a pool, a park, and a whole bunch of exciting things that we can use. But because of that, our HOA fees are higher. And if HOA fees are increasing, that's usually a result of the fees not covering the costs. So if there is an increase, it's typically due to poor management from the HOA, or they're scaling too big. So the only option they have is to raise fees.
Got it. Okay. I can tell you, I just bought a property in Tennessee, and not a lot of communities there, so HOA is probably less common. And so again, another cost factor that varies from state to state. But that's great inputs. Carla, I mean, you talked a little bit about some desired places, kind of historically, kind of forward looking a little bit. What are some of the indicators that make certain places more desirable than others?
States that attracted major corporates are like Tesla, Digital Realty, Oracle, Cross Street moved to their headquarters to Austin, Texas. That's why we saw a lot of rental property purchases in Texas, mainly the last 2 years. Blockchain.com, Block Tower, Capital, Walt Disney, they entirely moved their headquarters also to Florida. And Sendoso, Move, and Alliant Technology also moved their headquarters to Phoenix, Arizona. And recently, HomeLight also moved their headquarters to Scottsdale, Arizona. So we've seen rental property actions in Arizona as well. And Micron Technology moving its manufacturing to Boise, Idaho. And so this will definitely boom the Boise market within the next 2 years as well. So we'll see more rental properties getting purchased in Idaho as well.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Carl. I see some great questions on the Q&A, and we'll get to them in 2 or 3 minutes. Just before we do that, Joel, I mean, if you could give one final tip to the audience about ways to save on ongoing costs and increase ROI, what would it be?
The number one tip I would give is you need to nail proactive and preventative maintenance. When you are considering purchasing a property, you pay for an inspection usually. You should never skip out on that. It's a very detailed report. If you own a rental property already, before you list the home, you should do a detailed inspection to make sure everything works. The goal is to catch everything in the beginning, because that allows you to take care of all the problems at once, versus once you have a resident in the home, they will come up one at a time. And every time you have to send someone out, that costs you money. So if you compare doing it before versus doing it during an active lease, the costs are significantly different.
Got it.
It's also
Okay.
a better experience for the resident as well if there's less repairs to do during the lease.
That's a great tip. Just before I take the questions, one other final note. Right after this webinar, we're going to publish a QR code, a survey at the end of the webinar. Participants will get $20 gift card from Belong. And so stick with us for a few more minutes, fill in the survey. Would love your inputs on kind of how you find this this webinar, and was it helpful for you? Let's take some questions. So one question that I see is, how do you determine the appreciation rate, and what will it be? Joel, I don't know, you want to take that maybe?
Sure. So when you're looking at the appreciation rate, the biggest thing I would take into consideration is the historical figures over the past 10, 20 years. You'll always hear people say real estate long-term will always go up. It's really difficult to say month over month or year over year what it's going to be in advance. But based on data, you can bake on the fact if you buy an asset today and we fast forward 10 years from now, on average, you're going to see a positive return. And that's how I would look at it. I wish there was a better way to predict it
Yeah.
on a smaller scale.
Carla, would you like to add anything to that?
It's the same. It varies what kind of a property you're buying, and appreciation is always greater, 5 to 10 years down the road. And you can never go wrong putting your money in real estate.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
better than volatility in the marketplace, as you can see.
Yeah, that's for sure. Joel Anand is asking, do you get positive cash flow after giving to the property management company to manage?
It's a good question. So there's two ways to look at this. Depending on the cash flow when you purchase it, you're probably going to be spending 6 to 10% of your monthly rent towards the management fee, and 50% to 100% of 1 month's rent to have a resident placed. So depending on your numbers with the property, it could make you still positive, break even, or negative. The second part I wanted to bring up here with the cash flow positive is if you invest in the right system, you should be saving more money overall than you trying to figure out doing it yourself, because you'll end up losing more money. So in most cases, when you do hire a property management company or a home-to-home and management system, they should be saving you more money than they are costing you.
Got it. And you talked a little bit earlier about certain guarantees and cost reduction on maintenance, and I guess
Yes.
it kind of balances that versus the cost of property management.
Yeah, actually, can I give an example real quick? I actually just talked
Yeah.
to someone recently who was trying to do it themselves, and they had experienced over 30 days of vacancy because they listed their home way higher than market rent, and they were looking at getting a lease signed for a month later from the time I talked to them. In other words, from trying to do it out on their own, they had 60 days of vacancy and cost them thousands of dollars, versus if they would have handed it to someone who knew what they were doing from the beginning, they probably could have had a lease signed and someone move in within 21 days, thus saving them all that money. So food
Great
for thought on that.
example. Yeah. I mean, this one is a tough one, but I think that a lot of people in the audience are actually interested in your opinion. With people kind of losing their jobs left and right, are you still expecting rent increases moving forward? Carla, Joel, I don't know if any of you want to take that. I think that's probably anybody's opinion, but Joel, what's your thoughts on that?
I'll share my 2 cents. I think Carla has something she wants to share. So with the rent increases, I think everyone's going to pay close attention to this. I think because supply is still so limited, and also leases, they're typically a 12-month term. Even with people losing their jobs and money getting tight, it's going to take a lot of time for that to impact the market. And everyone's on fixed leases for the most part. So even if there is a correction, I don't foresee much of one happening, or most people will renew their leases at the current rate. I would find it unlikely that there would be any rent decreases whatsoever.
Carla, any thoughts on that?
There are always going to be more investors in the market purchasing investment properties and doing rentals more, because due to the demand, as you can see, the first time home buyers currently are not able to purchase homes at this time. So it's always going to be room for rentals, and we're not going to see any decreases in rents at this time. No.
Yeah. I'll share my 2 cents. Being here in San Francisco Bay Area, historically, a lot of people were buying houses based on, RSUs that they would get from large companies like Meta, Google, and others. So with those RSUs being valued, significantly lower, they can't afford to buy those houses, but they still need to live somewhere. And so they're either renting or they're moving to low-cost state, as Carla stated. And then the other thing, being someone that hires and interviews quite a bit of people, I actually find that a lot of them find jobs relatively quickly. I mean, especially if you work for a very large corporation like, again, like Meta and like Google, your experience and the scale at which you've done things is very valuable for other companies. And so, at least on kind of my network, I see that many people are able to find another job within, typically within 6-7 weeks. Keep in mind that a lot of these companies are also giving, longer notice periods and etc. And so, yeah, we'll probably, I don't know if we're going to see the same rate of increase that, we've seen historically. I think Carla mentioned 29% in Fort Lauderdale and other places in Florida, and 48% in Texas, in Austin, Texas. But I doubt that we'll see those rents going down. I think there was a question about FHA. So let me just finding that question. So bear with me one second. And Carla, you want to take that question?
Sure. The question was, can you start real estate investing by using FHA loan? The only time you're going to be able to do that if you are owner occupied, purchasing FHA, a multiple family home, for instance, triplex, fourplex, duplex, then you can do so. But if you're an investor, you're trying to purchase a straight out investment property, that program is not available because that's for first time home buyer program. And mainly investors usually going to be putting 25% down to purchase homes, single family homes or fourplexes or triplexes. You want to put a little bit more down so your cash flow is turning to positive within the year or two.
Perfect. Carla, one of the questions that I see is about recasting your loan. Can you talk a little bit about what recasting means and why it's important?
Sure. Recasting loan means you leave your existing note and your loan as is. So let's take an example. You purchased a house for $400,000. You put 25% down, and you have $350,000, let's say, left on it. And then now you're going to keep the rate is low. You're going to keep the note as is. And all you're doing is feeding the principal. First, you have to ask your investor if that's possibility to recast your loan. All you're doing is to reduce your principal, which is going to dramatically decrease your payment, which is a good way to go in this market. For instance, just in case, if you think that you're not creating enough positive cash flow, this is a good way of dumping that into the principal and then creating more cash flow for yourself as an investor.
That's a great tip. One other question maybe from Nico, and I think Carla, you're probably more qualified to take that. So,
Sure.
Are investors across the market okay with negative yield for the first year or two, given this market?
Yes, I think you're going to see at least the first year negative due to being the interest rate a little bit higher. This would be a good way of the one that I just talked about, recasting. So just in case if you have money sitting additional somewhere, you can always dump that into that loan program and then reduce your payments to create cash flow. Then you'll see your second year, third year positive cash flow as an investor.
Got it. Very helpful. I see a lot of discussion about different parts of the country and kind of different inputs from different homeowners. So I love the discussion that's going on there. We'll take maybe one last question from Lenworth Gordon. What about hurricane considerations in Florida? Is insurance higher Carla, I don't know, you're probably running some numbers, and so you're probably more familiar with that.
Well, insurance is a little bit higher in Florida because of, we have the hurricane season, water, flooding. So, but other than that, the prices are lower. So it kind of like evens it out. And some places the taxes are higher, like for instance, Texas, they have a higher taxes, property taxes. So it just kind of like it evens it out. So even being higher insurance, you can always look for, you can shop for insurances that, if you're not in the flood zone, then you should be okay.
Yeah.
But if you're in a flood zone, of course, you're going to see higher insurances in Florida, definitely.
And from personal experience, owning a few properties in Florida, I can say that first of all, it's all relative. And again, I'm comparing that to Northern California, so of course the insurance is much, much lower. But it definitely changes whether you're in a flooding zone or not. The other thing that I noticed is, given that a lot of properties in Florida are part of communities, the HOA many times is responsible for the roofing, and so which is, I guess, a big factor to be if you're in a hurricane area. And so actually the insurance in Florida, I haven't found it to be significantly higher than other places. Again, I try to stay away from flood areas. So Joel, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, all I was going to say is whenever you have an insurance premium, I think of your car insurance, you can always select how much coverage you want. So if you're really concerned about a high amount, you can always take less coverage. Now, I'm not an insurance expert. I prefer to err on the side of having a really good insurance program. But I think the original feedback of maybe not buying in a flood zone is probably the best first step. But if you do, just make sure you have good insurance. It's just a cost that comes with buying that property.
Perfect. Guys, this has been real joy. I really enjoyed the discussion. I think there has been a lot of great nuggets here. And so thank you again, Joel. Thank you, Carla. For those in the audience, again, we're putting the QR code. We'd love to hear from you, any feedback that you have on the webinar, and learn a little bit more about you. There was a question about the recording. So we will share a link to the recording shortly, and the recording is also going to be available on Belong's LinkedIn page. And again, the first 30 participants who will participate in the survey will get a small Amazon gift card. And again, thank you very much, Carla. Thank you very much, Joel. I definitely learned a lot. I hope you guys as well. Stay tuned to the next two webinars, which are going to focus more on kind of operationalizing your investment property. I think we just scratched the surface today with that topic. And have a great rest of the day. Enjoy the World Cup if you are watching. And thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.